Hey everybody, Psychosaurus is here. Welcome back to Age of Empires Online. And today, I decided to do some more talking. Yes, today I want to talk about the Armory upgrades and Armory. And I would say it's very important because Armory upgrades can matter a lot, especially in Legendary Quest. But I think it's important to talk about their value, how good they can actually be. So, First thing before the armor upgrades, you choose your civ, for example Greeks, and each unit has its own champion upgrade which grants them specific buffs. For example, Ballista champion upgrade is plus 20% movement speed, the battering ram would be damage and snare immunity, and so on, okay? Then obviously you have your milestones, your advisors, your civ specific text, which I would consider like the main factor that decides how strong your units are actually going to be. And also gear is very important. And yes, as I said, it's very important factor to how your units are actually going to perform during the quests. But there are also the armor upgrades, and armor upgrades are also important, but let's say there is some value but also something against it, because overall if I took a look at the Toxotes, granted it all of its upgrades from the academy, from the archery range, this would be basically the most important stats to see, because that's how strong the unit is gonna be overall throughout the game, 100%. But if I start adding the armor upgrades, obviously that unit is gonna be much stronger, but remember the enemy can also get the armor upgrades, which is gonna go against you, and so they're gonna negate each other. Now to explain it, we have 4 armory techs, unless you're playing as Egyptian, but I'll get to that later. But yeah, every civ, except Egyptians, gets 4 armory attacks, 1 for melee infantry and melee cavalry damage, 1 for pierce damage, 1 for melee infantry and melee cavalry armor, and 1 for pierce armor. So yeah, every civ gets that, and it's very important to notice that it says that increases the stat for all military units. Now, I was already talking about all of those units, so you can check out those videos, but basically, what is military unit? Anything that is not a villager, not a caravan, not a fishing boat, and I'm thinking could be some specific units for other civs. For example, for Romans, it could be the Roman engineer, for Indians, the elephant gatherer, and so on. But yeah, make sure to check out my videos about the units so you know what is military and what is not, because I was talking about it as well. Now, obviously, military units, this includes infantry units, ranged units, cavalry units, siege units, priest units, scouts as well. Also, advisor units are included as well. Now, also navy, I don't have naval units here, but it would be like your arrow ships, fire ships, ballista triremes, and also merchant transports. Those are included as well. Now, it is very important to know what damage type your units do and which upgrade to pick, because if I pick the temper upgrade for the melee damage and I was using mainly Toxotai, well, that would be terrible, because Toxotes does not do melee infantry damage nor melee cavalry damage, it's dealing pierce damage. So at that moment, yes, that would be a waste of resources, and that's very important to notice. So remember to check what the damage type your unit deals. Usually it's very easy to remember. If your unit is fighting in melee range, like for example Hippaspist or Hippicon, that means you want the melee damage, so the one on the left. And if your unit is attacking from the distance, like Toxotes, then you want the pierce damage, so remember that. Now, one thing to mention is, as you might notice, this grants 20% more damage, this one grants 20% more damage, this one grants 20% more armor, and this one grants 20% more armor. And this is very important to notice, okay? So basically, if you pick the melee damage upgrade and the enemy AI or player picks the melee armor instead, that means those two upgrades are gonna actually negate each other. How is that? Because obviously 20% more damage is 20% more damage. The armor, I was already talking about it so many times before, so you can check out some of my videos. I think it was about the armor and something, combat stats maybe, whatever. But it's somewhere there on my channel. But the way armor works in this case is 20% means 20% more health against the damage type. So obviously, if the enemy had 100% HP, now it will have 120% HP against Hippospis and Hippicons, for example. Now, if my Hippospis will have 20% more damage, that means, hey, it will take the same amount of time to kill as if there were no upgrades, okay? So yes, these upgrades are completely negating each other, which is very important to mention. Now, why are we actually getting these when, as you know, well, they are negating each other? What's the point of getting them? The thing is, either you want to get an edge over the enemy, because remember, if you get the extra damage against them, that means you are killing them faster. And because you are killing them faster, that means, hey, the units die sooner, they won't be able to do damage to your units. That means your units are taking less damage and they are not dying that much. And because they are not dying that much, obviously you're saving resources. So yeah, a lot of positive effects. Same thing could be said about the armor. Because your units last longer, they won't die super fast. And because they are not dying super fast, they will deal more damage. And because they do more damage over time while taking less damage, hey, you're saving more resources. As you don't have to replace them the units that often. So, obviously, positive effects. So yes, one thing is getting the edge. Now, that might not be the case all the time. So the other scenario would be you don't want to be behind, okay? If the enemy is getting the upgrades, that means they are getting the edge over you. So you want to get yourself your army upgrades, so your units are not dying super fast, so your units can actually kill the enemy units in a reasonable amount of time and not taking forever. And so yes, you want to get those armor upgrades no matter what, so you either get the edge over the enemy or you are not behind the enemy. So it is very important. Another good reason would be because you are getting, let's say, the melee damage. This will actually help you to do more damage to buildings, because buildings are not included in these armor upgrades. Remember, this is all military units. Buildings are not included. So that means if I have more damage on my Hippospist, that means it will destroy buildings much faster. That is very important to notice. And same thing could be said about the Pierce armor upgrade, as this will help you survive fortresses longer, okay? Fortresses will do much less damage because of that. Same thing goes about the TCs. Although TCs get the age up upgrades, their damage is not super high. So yes, against TCs, this should help as well. So there's that. Against towers, this one might depend, because some civs get 2 tower upgrades, some civs get only 1. So if they get only 1, yes, it's definitely a lot more value for you. But some civs get 2 upgrades, and in that case, yes, it can depend, but it should be still slight edge for you overall, if I'm not mistaken, because it's like 30% and 30% more damage. Yes. So that should be like what is it, like 69% damage overall? Yes, that's it. While with all of the armor upgrades, you will get like 77% extra HP against pierce damage, so you will still have slightly more HP against the towers. So yes, it's totally worth it. But yeah, the main reason would be the damage against buildings, so you destroy them faster, and the pierce armor, so you survive. Not really the towers, but the fortresses are definitely like one of the reasons. Now, excuse me. One thing about the upgrades, okay, is they are very expensive. As you can see, one of these upgrades costs 150 wood, 150 gold, and 75 stone, which is a lot of resources, okay? 375 resources, that's not a joke, okay? That's a lot of resources invested into one of these upgrades. Not to mention, you also have to build the armory, which base cost is 200 wood. So if you want to get your first armory upgrade, let's say the melee damage, it will cost you the 200 wood, plus the build time of the armory, because hey, villager needs to build that. So there's some work time wasted there, so it's even more. And then you need to pay for the upgrade, which is already a lot. So you could say, hey, it's like 600 units already wasted into the first armory upgrade. So yes, very expensive to get there. This is gonna be very important for you if you're playing mainly PvP, because obviously 600 resources invested into this. And why 600? Because the villager work time means, hey, the villager is not gathering resources, so again, that's some extra cost. So yes, over 600 units invested into one single upgrade, that's a lot, okay? So in that case, if you're playing PvP especially, it might be better to just invest into your units, because goddamn, if your Hippospis costs what? This is like 30-25, so 55. Yeah, you can have 10 extra Hippospis. Which can be a lot, depends, obviously, like what situation you're currently in. But yeah, it might be just better to get the units instead and just make your army bigger. Not only that, it's gonna be a lot cheaper to just get those units and increase your numbers. And once you cannot really invest into your units anymore, then it's just gonna be worth getting the upgrade. And obviously, if your units can get more damage, like if you have a lot of melee units and they suddenly do more damage, yes, that's a huge value for you. But yeah, careful, it's a huge investment early, so you don't want to really go into it too soon, as that can be like too expensive for you, while you could go with like few extra units, okay? So don't go right away into the armory tax unless you really want to. And if you're playing PvE, obviously you could pick Kratos Advisor and make those tags cheaper. But yeah, if you're not using Kratos, those tags very expensive, especially the first one. But once you have the armory and you research the first one, then it's just extra 375 for each. Now there are 3 tiers of these armory upgrades, okay? So you have these, which are the first tier. These are available since H2, obviously, because armory becomes available in H2, so that's the earliest you can get them. So let's get this one, okay? Let's go with the pierce damage. Now the base research time is 60 seconds for the tier 1, and as you go through the tiers, which is 1 tier per age, so the second tier would be available to you in H3 and the third tier in H4. Now the second tier will actually cost more. How much more? It's actually twice as much as the first tier, and the value is basically another 20% extra damage or armor. As you can see right here, it is basically the same effect, but now it costs twice as much. That's a lot more resources, okay? 750, okay? That's a lot. That's already a huge investment. Is it worth it? It is, but at what point, okay? But this is where it matters more to PvP players than PvE, because PvE, yeah, whatever, we just get it. We are rich because we have the work tools on villagers. But in PvP, now that's a huge investment, okay? Getting here and trying to get the second tier, that's gonna cost you a lot of resources, because remember, I paid 375 for the first tier, now I'm paying 750 for the second tier, which is already 1150 units of resources invested into these upgrades. And that's just one. Remember, that's only the pierce damage. Remember, there are 4 of these. So yes, instead of like trying to invest into the second tier, try to focus on the other upgrades as well, because for the second tier you could just get both armor upgrades, you know. You could get both melee and pierce, which might be a lot more value than just getting another 20% into pierce damage. But yes, here is the third one. As you can see, again, it's twice as expensive as the second tier, while giving you the same effect of 20% extra damage or armor, depending what you research. So yes, it's much more expensive. So suddenly 1500, oh my god, that's more than the previous 2, okay? So yes, very expensive, okay? Again, PvE, we don't care, we have resources. PvP, huge investment, super late game, okay? So you want to be careful, you don't want to like overspend your resources on these upgrades too soon. You want to make sure you have the army that can actually use the upgrades, because if you don't have the army, what's the point of getting these upgrades? What's the point of investing that many resources? Also, you might have noticed that the second tier took a little bit longer than the first tier, which base research time for the second tier is 80 seconds, and the third tier is actually again longer. That one has 100-second base research time, but obviously if you can modify the times a little bit, that's good for you, okay? The sooner you get those upgrades, the better, but still, it's a lot of resources you need to invest into these. Now, I grabbed this, just so you know, hey, Toxotes is being affected. Now, there is a nice thing that was added in Project Celeste. We have the icons for the armory upgrades. As you can see, Toxotes has it, the nice silver arrow. You can see the damage went up by, I think it's 44%, right? It was 30, so yes, it is 44%. Remember, there is the multiplicative effect of stacking the damage, so if you get the first one, it's 20%. Then remember, you have 120, and then you increase it by 20%, so you will have 144, and then again it would be another 20% multiplied at 144%. So yes, this is 44% damage increase. You can see it's exactly. Now, as I mentioned, the armor upgrades do affect military units, which Toxotes is, but if you take a look, tower is not affected, okay? You don't have it on tower. If we take a look, Hate Hospice also is not affected, because that's not an upgrade for him. It does not do pierce damage, it deals melee infantry damage. Same goes for Hippicon, Ballista as well. See, Priest, nope. And I just want to mention, villagers are not military unit, you remember that, so whatever you research at the armory, villagers will not get affected, okay? So here you should not see it. If you do see it, that's a bug, no matter what. You should not see that. But yeah, there's that. Okay, I hope I said everything. Yeah, I think about the armor upgrades. Okay, so if I research the armor upgrades though, that would affect everyone, okay? Because every military unit, and we can just show it. So let's get the armor upgrade. So the shield, let's say the pierce armor, that should affect all of these except the villager, except the buildings, but all of the military units here, those should get affected no matter what. Now, while it's getting researched, I want to mention there are also units like ballistas or battering rams that are not being affected by the damage armory upgrades, okay? Why is that? Because they deal crush damage. And I just want to point out the value of these units, okay? Because they are not affected by the armory upgrades, you don't have to spend all those resources to get those upgrades. So, which means, hey, those units will always do the full damage. Now there's a trade-off. The enemy does not have to spend their resources to get the crush armor to counter the crush damage upgrades. So yes, they are compensated that they will not have to spend their resources for the armor. So that's disadvantage. And also because you are not getting the upgrades, your siege units that you, or yeah, ballistas, battering rams, could be also fire ships, ballista triremes, they will not do extra damage to buildings, which in most cases does not really matter because they already do a lot of damage to buildings. Ballista here, for example, deals 4 times the amount to buildings. Battering rams do, well, I think this is high because of this, yes, so yeah, what is the base value? Is it 5 times? I guess it's 5 times for PvE. Remember, in PvP it's slightly different because of the champion mode text tree. So it's gonna be slightly different, but yeah, battering rams 5 times. Again, they will do a lot of damage. So yeah, you don't really need it there. And in that case, you just need to pay attention to what you're fighting against with your, let's say, ballistas, because if you fight with infantry units, they have some crush armor, but obviously it's not super high. So yes, ballistas will be able to do some damage. But the infantry will be able to survive it a little bit better than, let's say, ranged units like Toxotes, which has 0 crush armor. But the Hippicon, yeah, that's a lot of crush armor. So yeah, they can definitely take some hits from ballistas. So just remember that ballistas, battering rams, there is no upgrade for them, which means, hey, you save a lot of resources. So instead, you can just invest into training those units. And then use, let's say, Hippospist as your front line and upgrade those Hippospists. So you will need only 3 of these instead of 4, okay? Definitely worth it. Now, we got the TPS armor. So we saw it, the Hippospist got it, Toxotes got it, Ballistas got it. So you can see all of these are being affected. Same goes for Somatophylax. Now Priest is also being affected, as you can see, and the Scout as well. So yes, all of these are being affected. While the Villager, yeah, no pierce armor here. Or I should say, no extra pierce armor here. So you can see it works. Just make sure, buildings, only 0.8, the base pierce armor. So yes, buildings are not being affected by the armor upgrade. So here you can see military units only, not buildings. Okay. And I would say that's all I wanted to say about this here. Now I just want to mention there is one super annoying stat which, goddamn, Celeste team has decided to just give you a lot of for no reason through gear, and in case of Indians through champion upgrades and special tech. And that's super annoying stat is obviously called Ignore Armor. Now, if you are watching me for a while, you know I'm super critical towards so many Ignore Armor gear or upgrades or whatever. And I dare to say it's for a reason, okay? I just want to point out I have a good reason for that. First of all, piercing frost arrows are super strong. I hate it because it's like super high damage with maximum range, okay? Like, imagine you take the Kartak Legion arrows for full damage, like, which is like 16%. Maybe it goes slightly lower, okay? Depends on the unit. But let's take that and give it 12% maximum range. This is basically what this is. But obviously, depends on the unit you're dealing with. Now, there has been other items being released, like for example the Axe of the Piercing Frost, which in my opinion used to be a lot better, a lot more interesting before they changed it to just full damage and 25% ignore armor. Goddamn. And then you have like the sword, which is like 20%. Heavy spear, which is 30% or 31, something like that. Light spear, I think, is also like 30%. Do I have the light spear? I think it should be here. Yeah, 30%. And then you have Indians, Gara Warrior Champion upgrade, 400 gold, 25% ignore armor. The War Elephant, 800 gold, 50% ignore armor. Now, why I'm so critical towards it? Number one, and I already mentioned this in one of my previous videos. As I mentioned, these upgrades at the Armory cost a lot of resources. So it was 375, 750, and 1500, which is like, what is it, like 2625 total for one of these. Okay, so it's, let's say for Pierce armor, that's 2600. For the melee, that's another 2600. Okay, very expensive. Okay, and now here comes the ignore armor that is like ignoring the portion of the enemy armor. Like, for example, the Axe of the Piercing Frost, 25%. Remember, the ignore armor is working on the damage reduction you see here at the unit stats. So the 25% would reduce the 0.3 here from Hypaspist. So what would it be? What is it? One. Sorry, it's a little bit late. Focus. Goddamn. So yeah, it's like. So yeah, like 7.5 damage reduction removed from here. Yeah, that's like good amount. But remember, there are other units. For example, legionaries, and that unit has a lot of its cost being invested into that high infantry armor. And suddenly there is a Gara warrior that ignores 25% of that value. So a lot of the value that the legionary has is now being removed, okay? Which not only that it reduces the value of the legionary, that also reduces the value of unit like Clinicus, the healer, because obviously armor and the healing goes real well together. Armor increases the value of the healed HP, so yes, that's really good. But suddenly, hey, there's a Gara warrior ignoring 25% of the armor, so even the healing is not that valuable now. And you invested what, like into the legionaries, into the Clinicus, like that's a lot of resources spent there. And here comes Gara warrior, which spent like 400 gold on one single upgrade. What? And now remember, if you keep getting more of these upgrades, that value of the champion upgrade is going up. You are losing resources because you invested into the melee upgrades, melee armor upgrades. So your armor should be going up, which definitely does. But at the same time, the value of the ignore armor is now going up as well. Okay, and while you did invested so many resources into your armor upgrades, you're not getting the full value there. No, instead, the enemy is now getting, it's like stealing the value from the armor upgrades for itself. But all they did was spend 400 gold. And I keep mentioning Gara Warrior, okay. Gara Warrior is like one of those that I seriously hate. But yeah, they invested 400 gold to get one upgrade. I wanted to get my armor upgrades. I invest 2600 units, but I'm not getting the full value. Just imagine, Toxotes would be going down to just from 0.4 to 0.3. So now I have lost like 1500 units to get like the second tier effect, while they spent like 400 gold. What is that, you know? Again, this is why I'm so critical towards the ignore armor. Now, I wouldn't be bothered if the ignore armor would be so high, but at the same time, I wouldn't want the gear to have so much damage. Like, come on, that piercing frost axe, it has full damage. Like compared it to double-edged or champion's axe, it's the same damage value with 25% ignore armor, which is nonsense. Come on, that's just nonsense. You invest so much into the armor upgrades. The enemy shouldn't be like, you know, it shouldn't be so good against the enemy that's getting all the armor upgrades, because again, the units, it's a, like, you have the legionary, it's supposed to be one of their strengths, you know. It should be like able to counter like infantry with its high armor. Now I am not saying that cannot be like, hey, units that ignore armor, for example, that is still the throwing axeman. The thing is, when you compare Gala Warrior with throwing axeman is specifically designed against infantry units. Okay, it can do some extra damage to ranged units, but a lot of the ranged units will just outrange the throwing axeman, so it doesn't matter there that much. But it's mainly against infantry units, and yes, that unit is gonna brutally counter infantry units. But if you send throwing axeman against cavalry units, it will take forever to kill that cavalry unit, you know? Even with the ignore armor, that unit does not have super high base damage. But the Gala Warrior has high base damage, which, if I remember, was 15 DPS, while the throwing axeman is like 6.5, something like that. Huge difference, if you ask me. And the Gala Warrior is also getting increased attack range. So when you have a bunch of Gala Warriors, they are attacking at the same time, doing a lot of damage. So there's value there. Sure, throwing axeman, you need the numbers to do a lot of damage. But Galas, goddamn, it's insane. Like, come on, even Gadas like can fight cavalry units, but if you send throwing axemen against cavalry units, sure, you can kill a few cavalry units if you focus them down. Gala Warriors don't need that, and Gala Warriors also have a lot more health than goddamn throwing axemen. And even the cost, what is it, like, isn't Gala like 35-25? Throwing axemen is 20-20-20. So 60 units both? I don't know. But yeah, I'm just gonna be critical against, namely, the items. Like, Gala Warriors, I'm gonna say, hey, I'm okay if they have the ignore armor, just not that high, okay? I think it should go down. And in the end, still have like extra 15% from another upgrade, okay? So that would be just fine. But like the gear, goddamn, when you combine it with that high damage, that's where I hate it. That's where I seriously hate it, okay? That's just straight up wrong design, no matter what. You look at the piercings. Do I have the? Yes. Right, this. Look at this. 44.5 damage, 20% ignore armor, and some extra health, okay? Do I have... where's the speed? Okay. 37.2 damage, 30% ignore armor. Just goddamn. And also 12.9 health. Like 7%, like 7% damage for 10% ignore armor. That's how you see it? Like, come on. That's nonsense. Like, okay, it can be like trade-off. Yeah, you lose that amount of damage to get some extra ignore armor. Fine, but goddamn, the ignore armor value is just so high. It's insane. Like, I keep criticizing, like, you just see the full armor upgrade from the Armory, all 3 tiers, and the value here is just so much better than some full damage light spears. Like, goddamn, that's just wrong. Okay, anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to press the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. I hope I did not forget anything. Yeah, I think I mentioned everything about the armor upgrades. Remember to get them. In PvP, careful. It's quite heavy cost to get the first armor upgrades, and even all the other. it would be better to invest into your units. In PvE, doesn't matter. We have the goddamn tools here. So remember that. And remember to never fall behind with your armor upgrades, because especially legendary quests, that can hurt your units a lot. And if your units are dying super fast, it will cost you a lot of other resources. So it's very important to invest into your armor upgrades. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and yeah, this was Psychosaurus. I'll see you next time. Bye!